This is My Village Experience. I'm your host, Mesa Saw. Welcome. Hello villagers, back in the My Village Experience. Today we have Natalie, and she's going to talk about copywriting, mindfulness, in between other subjects. So Natalie, how are you today?
I'm good, thanks.
I know between here it's not easy. It's not always easy.
No.
So right from the top, if you would have 3 essential items, what would it be?
So the first one would probably be my journal.
Okay.
I don't like going very far without having something to write in.
Okay.
Helps me process what I'm thinking and feeling, and also because I use that material later for what I write about in my podcast and stuff. So yeah, very important.
Okay.
Any book or audio talk about meditation, which I go to frequently to kind of ground me. Even though I've been doing it a long time and studying it a long time, we all forget what we're supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
So yeah, either a book or a teaching that I would listen to. Does my dog count as an item?
If you'd like to. Most of the time I don't ask as if an item, but I need it at some point to focus it much more. Okay. Because it's something, of course, essential to you.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely my dog.
Yeah.
He reminds me of what's important, and he reminds me how to be kind and to be present as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a great point. And so, where are you from? Where did you grow up?
I grew up here. I grew up about half an hour in Dunrobin, which is about half an hour from Ottawa. Okay. Mostly, earlier years I was in Canada. I lived on a horse farm, 50 acres. Yeah. It was very beautiful and very difficult as a kid to be somewhere that far away. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Because there is not that much population, I guess. And much less then than there is now. Yeah, of course. So, even now it's not still a populated place. Yeah. And what is your main occupation? I would say writer. So I do copywriting, but also I write my own podcast and I produce that. And so I would, if I had to blanket, I would say writer. Yeah. And what led you to that? What gets you into writing and copywriting, as you mentioned at some point? Well, I've been writing since I was 10. I always wrote. It was kind of my way of understanding the world, I think, and it was a safe place for me because didn't have a lot of safe places as a kid. So I did it. I never thought anything of it. I studied photography and psychology in university. Okay. Why didn't you go into writing or? Just never occurred to me. Okay. It was not something I ever thought about doing as a career. Because it was natural, so something that you just love, but going like breathing. Okay, basically. Exactly. So after I graduated, I traveled for a bit, and then I decided I wanted to go into journalism. 9/11 had just happened, so I decided, and I want to use this writing thing to do something practical, because I felt like I had to be practical and I wanted to be useful. Okay. So I moved to Montreal. I did not get accepted into journalism school. I started work my way into working in television, private television, and then eventually working I was freelancing, and then I working at the CBC, and then from there more television, script writing, radio, and then eventually worked my way into copywriting. It all kind of overlapped. Yeah, of course. And about copywriting, what exactly attracted you to copywriting? Because it's something like much more precise, than writing in general. I mean, honestly, it's a practical way to earn a living as a writer. Journalism, as you know, is a dying breed, unfortunately. Working in Montreal as an English journalist was like...
Yeah, I understand. I studied Sherbrooke, University of Sherbrooke, so it's close. And I know how, if you're Anglo in Quebec in general, it's tough.
So it was kind of... The options were not available to me that I wanted. I also am not by nature an ambulance chasing type of person, so I don't like getting in people's faces. And so that I love long form journalism, feature journalism, but not the sort of daily news stuff.
Yes, exactly.
So it just kind of happened. People would start asking me to write stuff for them, and I mean I love a lot of things about it. I love helping someone deliver their message. So I work for a lot of businesses and entrepreneurs. So they have a tone of voice that they want to put forward, and they have a message, and they don't know how to do that.
Of course.
So I really enjoy that role. It's a good challenge. I learn about a lot of things, which is similar to being a journalist.
Yeah, exactly.
Learning about law and cybersecurity and just all kinds of different subjects.
Different fields at the same time.
And it gives me a lot of freedom.
Of course.
I don't have to be in one place. I can work from home.
Of course.
It's really not. It's never boring.
Never, of course. You always keep learning, and that's one of the things I particularly personally like about translating. In a sense that every day I learn about a lot of fields at the same time. The fields that maybe didn't attract me at first and something like that. And at some point I just find myself looking for them afterwards and something like that, looking for more information because I found something interesting. And it's one of the reasons I think of this podcast at some point, because I had all those informations and about even social issues. The mindfulness at some point struck me because of the well-being in general of whether in the government or anywhere else in workplaces. And those are one of the stuff that attracted me much more and had that social impact, and it kind of eases the way to being together like a community. And that's why I'm much more focused on people in Ottawa to get their perspective much more, because we all have that town that we share, and in the sense that and people like you personally can have that bigger impact. As you mentioned earlier, the fact that writing was helping you understand the world and how you see it, and that exactly personally it have already that impact of being more mindful in my writing and in the things that we all do in the daily. And at some point you just need to be much more mindful about it, rather than just taking it as a job or as something that you are getting paid off. You don't really have the same relationship to that than just doing it on your own. As you said, that writing attracted you personally rather than being something that you pushed to. And so mindfulness, what was the first contact? How did it happen?
I think, I don't honestly remember what the very first contact was. I mean, I was interested in, again, as a teenager, before anyone was doing it. And I had a lot of anxiety in my 20s, and I guess was reading about it and sort of practicing it, unofficially, or not really knowing what I was doing. I started practicing regularly in 2007, and I did my first retreat in 2008, and I guess that would be my real introduction into
Where was it? The
retreat? Not far from here. It was in Wakefield.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what struck you especially with mindfulness? How do you first define mindfulness, and from there?
So I actually try to not use the word mindfulness as often, because it's gotten a little bit skewed. They say that meditation has two wings: mindfulness and compassion.
Of course. And
there's a lot of focus right now on mindfulness in our culture. But without compassion, mindfulness is useless.
Basically useless, yes.
So, sorry, what was the question now?
The mindfulness, how do you define it? So that we can have people.
I define it as paying attention and being in the present and learning not to believe my thoughts.
Yeah, thoughts are a little tricky.
Yeah.
Of course. So, what was your, let's say, implementation of mindfulness? As you mentioned at some point that you went to retreats,
yeah.
and you probably do meditation.
Yeah.
And so those are your daily implementation of mindfulness, I guess.
Yeah, and I teach it.
Okay, and of course,
so that helps me. That keeps me on my game. Yeah.
So, what was the first thing that you done with the mindfulness? Was it meditation? What did attract you first with, apart from, as you said?
It was because I really struggled with anxiety. It was learning to accept myself. It was about learning to accept myself and accept my life and not feel like I was doing everything wrong, which is kind of how I was always thinking. Yeah, so I was learning how to, really it was about love. Yeah, and seeing past what I was being fed by society.
And that's one of the issues too, I think, nowadays about information. We kind of have way too much information, and most of us don't know what to do with them.
Right.
Because it's all in the social medias, it's all on TVs and stuff like that. And we are now in time of fake news. And you probably know much more about how any news basically can be tricked to for certain gains. And I guess in a certain sense, while doing copywriting and being mindful of whatever you're doing, do you feel that there is a pressure in how you convey the information in copywriting or even in your podcast, like a certain sense of responsibility?
Yes. I think that's my choice. It's not choice, but that's something that comes from me. I don't feel comfortable, for example, I won't work for anyone who's doing anything that I don't deem to be ethical. My own writing and my podcasting is really about kind of similar to what you said. It's about being honest and being truthful, because I feel as though right now a lot of the information that's out there is, even if it's not fake news, it's not real. Instagram is not real. Social media is not real. And so everybody's caught up with this idea of what life is supposed to look like, and nobody's talking to each other about what's really happening. So that, to me, as a writer, is why I write. And it's not like some big, battle cry. It's what I need as a person. So it's what I try and give to others. Of course.
And as you showed, it's your personal choice, and that's one of the things too, like in general, that people kind of hide behind what the majority of people are doing or how they see life to be, as I said. And each of us needs our own view of life and maybe work towards that or work according to those values.
That's right.
And what is the main theme of your podcast, if you can talk about your podcast?
It's a storytelling podcast, so it's very edited and very, that's why it's taking me so long. It's about being single.
Okay.
So I got divorced when I was, I got separated from my ex-husband when I was about 37, and I realized, and I started traveling. I traveled for 2.5 years, and I realized I did not know how to be alone. And I started to realize how focused our culture is on couplehood, rather than, and not that there's anything wrong with couplehood, but rather than celebrating what happens when you're alone, which can be very important in your life. You can learn a lot about yourself and really learn to love yourself. So no one was talking about it really, so I started talking about it. So it's my own story, and then I have other people's stories as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Most of the time, only when you were alone that you discover yourself better.
Yeah.
Because when you're alone, I feel like that in a sense, there is not the judgment, positive or negative, but it has that effect on us. On our choices at some point, because it's not that you're totally closed in your own bulb, that you don't see anyone else and stuff, but that you know yourself better. The choices that you're taking at all points are your own, but not the other person in front of you or the society or whatever they want. Because in the end of the day, it's each of us our own individual.
That's right. And if you weren't encouraged to be that as a child, which some people weren't, you kind of keep looking for people who are not on purpose but subconsciously that you're trying to mold into their life, rather than deciding this is who I am, this is how I want to live, and find someone I can walk next to. And that's what I was doing. I didn't know how to just be me. It's cliche, but
yes, of course. Yes, of course. And it takes us to the social issues, as I said at some point.
I volunteered in Montreal when I lived in Montreal for 60 Million Girls, which is an organization that funds education for girls in developing countries. And through that experience, really began to understand. I think it is one of the most important issues there is in terms of changing the way the planet is going.
Of course.
And through that, I went to Uganda and I volunteered with one of their partner organizations. Was really very life-changing.
Was it part of your 2 years traveling? Okay.
Yeah, that's how it started.
Okay.
Yeah. I believe, though, that in terms of social issues, all social issues, the problem that's happening, in my humble opinion, is that in the West, in this part of the world, we're very isolated. We don't talk to each other. We're not honest with each other, and everybody is there's a sort of everyone's operating from a place of scarcity of fear. I don't mean scarcity necessarily of resources. I mean scarcity of love.
Okay.
And I think people are afraid, and so everyone is living in their little house with their family, being very stressed out because we're not living in community. And so really fundamentally, my issue is actually about community. And I think that we need more community, which is why I love the name of your show. We need to be talking to each other, and we need to be learning how to be compassionate to ourselves so that we can be compassionate to each other, and from there fixing, helping the problems that are happening in the rest of the world. Because right now I just feel like there's a big wall, that everyone here is so stressed out and freaked out. They don't have the energy to look outside their own life and go, oh my God, wow, I could do so much for whoever.
Absolutely. And it's one of the issues, I think, not a while ago, in England, they created a whole ministry of loneliness. Because
really?
Yes, they did. And this week, I think they were talking about in the National about how lonely right now people are getting. And as you were saying, the thing is that the community they do exist. Of course, we see all those millions of people around, but is there a coming together, but being real in a sense?
Yes.
That's what I mean with community, is that we can all come with our ideas and stuff, but being real is that the community starts with your neighbor.
Yeah.
If you don't even talk to your neighbor,
That's
if
right.
you don't talk to the people that are around you first, how can you even reach much further than that? How can you even try to change literally the world? Because that's I feel the power that we each of us have, our utopia, if you can call it that. When you share, you can have other people that share the same ideas as you. Right. And once we come with all of us with all those ideas, we can realize something. As you said, you were from Canada, you went to Uganda to change something else, and it has the big impact in those people. And you're still living here. Yeah. You might have reports and stuff of whatever you achieved there, and how it's still going on, and it still have impact in those people.
Yes.
This is all part of the My Village, that we can all come together, get definitions, get frameworks, and have ideas about solutions. Because it's not just the government or the people that are there that have the solutions. They're working for the people, for the community, but the community need to voice more and more what they think about those solutions that the government or any single government is taking in their names.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So, one event that had the big impact in your life, what would it be?
So this is a bit of a downer, but anyway, when I was traveling in 2005, I was traveling in Greece and I was sexually assaulted. And I went public. I went to the authorities. I went public about it. And when the rapist was caught, there was multiple trials. It was a whole big giant mess. And this was before Me Too. So there was still a lot of stigma. It was really actually quite interesting to watch how things have changed.
Of course.
I came out and I did not, and this is not like poor me or, but I did not receive the support that people are getting now. So there was a lot of, I was, trolled and attacked and quoted out of context. And after I went to Greece for one of the trials, which was postponed. Eventually there was a trial, but I really think I don't think I had processed what had happened until then. So it was 5 years later, and I had a big breakdown, and I realized that I realized through therapy that I had been blaming myself, and again, and a lot of other people around me, you know, they didn't necessarily blame me, but there was still a lot of that victim mentality. People just didn't think the way they do now, which is only, you know, it was only what 8 years before Me Too. So it took a lot of time and a lot of understanding for me to stop blaming myself, and I think that what the whole experience taught me was to, you know, is to always stand up for people who've had that kind of experience, and to never pin the blame on the survivor, and to just, it gave me a lot of fire for when Me Too did happen, to really go into that with guns blazing. And I had a lot of conversations with a lot of people who were still not understanding what was going on. You know, if a woman is cut down in a conference, why doesn't she just walk out? And it was like I had this kind of experience behind me already to be able to say, well, this is why, and really say it with conviction and feel how important that cause was, and it continues to be. So yeah, I would say that's. It's an unfortunate event, but it was probably the one that has the biggest impact.
And how did you react, let's say, the first time you heard about the Me Too movement in general and their work in the media? Because we all saw it at some point in the social media. Most didn't realize what it was really and what was happening, because it's not one new happening in the whole history of human beings. So how is it that at some point the Me Too movement kind of put it in front, I say, of everyone, the people who knew, or the people who never had or never knew anyone that had that type of experience? How did you react the first time you heard the Me Too movement?
I was stunned. I remember it was Facebook, and everyone was saying Me Too, and I was like, what's this? And then actually, this is a whole other strange story. So when I was in Uganda, I received an email from an American woman who found me because she had been raped by the same man, and under very similar circumstances, and she had never reported it and kind of tried to convince herself it didn't happen. And she found me and she emailed me, and we became very good friends. In fact, we've worked together. She's a writer also. She posted on Facebook something, and then I understood what was going on, and I remember where I was sitting, and then she and I actually co-wrote a piece that was in the Rumpus together about how we met through this insane, terrible thing, and became really good friends. So there was a lot of relief. There was a lot of validation. It was validation. It was kind of like retroactive validation that I wish I had at the time, but I still felt, thank God this is happening.
Yes, for sure.
And I just, and like I said, and then, you know, then there would be a conversation would come up amongst friends, and someone would say something, a man would say something unthinkingly, and I would have the courage to say, you know, that's not okay. And not in a rude way, but just say this, look, you think about before you open your mouth. This isn't funny. That took a long time. And I feel so good that all sorts of people are doing that, men and women now are doing that and are feeling safer to do that, or when they're talking to their friends, like the conversation about, you know, why doesn't a woman just walk out of a conference when, to be able to say, look, no, you need to listen. It's not okay. It's not okay. It's not how it works. It's like it gave us all strength that we all needed. So, yeah, but relief.
I think in a global sense of it, even for the Me Too movement, I feel that it has become, as you mentioned, the framework for even the next generation to know these things are not okay. Right. And even for the people that it did happen to, that they know that it's not only them that it happened, and each of their cases is as essential and as important and serious matter as every other cases. And I feel much more for the next generations to know not only it's not okay, but that they can voice it too. Yeah. Because that's what I understood in what you were saying, that most of those people, not only you feel yourself, you feel judged, but you feel even that you don't have to voice it kind of in a certain way, because you mentioned that the other person didn't feel as in reporting it, and which is the first step.
That's right. That's right. But there was so much. I was just thinking about this for some reason the other day. A friend that I hadn't seen in a long time, I got together with a few years after this had happened, and she told me about it happening to her with one of her working superiors. And she said, well, I didn't do anything about it because I didn't want to be that girl.
Of course.
And I don't judge her for that, but it's like that, like there's much less chance of that happening now, you know? And how sad that it came down to us. I don't want to be that girl instead of, well, he shouldn't have been that guy, or they shouldn't have been that person. Exactly. Yeah. So what a remarkable and miraculous thing. Miraculous. It's just good.
in fact. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hopefully we can all learn from these, not only points, but the Me Too movement we ended with, that we can all support that the people that we know, and the movement in general, and other movements too, because the Me Too movement was not the first to tackle this violence and others type of violence towards even men too, because it happened in both sides. Even for the Me Too, I saw some comments and reports of people around the world, and it's getting more and more, and people are actually converting it into their space in the world, into the regions, and translating it right now into the local language, so that people can know what it's about, to know that globally it's just not okay.
Right.
And I can be much more thankful that you mentioned it, because it's not only it's news, but it's something that we should all hear about and get much more insight, real insight from real people that know what you're talking about, as you said, because you need to know something before talking about it.
That's right.
That's the first step.
And it goes back to earlier what I said about the more we share and the more honest we are, the easier it is for someone else. That's a perfect example of that. You tell your story, and that gives somebody even one person the courage to tell their story. And there's such a huge difference also between what's happening here with Me Too and what's happening, let's say, in Africa with Me Too, as you know, and where there's so much shame and so much stigma for a young woman or a woman to come forward,
culturally,
that is unthinkable for most,
and
even that's going to start changing. So anyway, I can go on.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Please share, subscribe, and review. Also, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. And until next time, never forget, you're as unique as the universe. Peace be with you.